Hi, it's Vera. I have a new book for you today that I think a lot of teachers would enjoy reading. This is for anyone who is having their students do any kind of writing, and I do not think in any way that this is limited to an English classroom or a reading or writing circle in an elementary classroom. In fact, this book has been approved by the people in my reading group and writing groups for K through college because of the flexibility of the nature of ideas in this book. So the book is called The Digital Writing Workshop by Troy Hicks. It was published maybe about 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago. And the book seems that it would be a bit out of date considering that it's about digital writing, but in fact, it's not. None of the technologies mentioned in this book are out of service or are improved upon in such a way that they've been replaced. And this excited me about this book because this was a really good book for teaching the teacher how to use the technology and teaching the student how to use the technology. So, the first thing that this book sets forth for the reader is that it believes in the writing workshop theory that you should be teaching the writer and not the writing. And a lot of times when we look at writing, we think of it in that way that we're commenting on the writing and we're focusing on the writing as the product. But in fact, we should be working through the workshop process. And so this book mimics that workshop process for you while giving you those tools that you can use outside of that process or how they can be used within that process. And the book looks at writing in the lens that it's about the many ways in which language, culture, and technology interact now. And previously, technology didn't interact in the same way with writing that it does now, and nor did culture for a long time. And now those three things seem to be a part of each other because of the global world that we have with the internet. The book is very practical. It has starting points for including meaningful incorporation of technology in your classroom, and some of those things are it has directions on how to use RSS feeds for your research projects in order to teach your students a valuable method of inquiry. And it gives you a PDF on how to use those RSS, and it also gives you a video. And I think it's good for teachers because if you aren't familiar with the process, it'll teach you, but it also frames it in such a way that you can use those to teach your students. The next thing that the book does in order to show you some practical starting points for tech is it gives you screenshots of those digital spaces in action. And even though the age of the book is not within the last 2 years or 3 years, those screenshots are still valid and still usable today. The book also situates the use of technology in the habits of mind, which are an awesome way to frame your learning for your students. And it looks at habits of mind such as openness and that collaboration between writers. It looks at persistence and the idea of revision and engagement and the idea of having your students be actively and authentically engaged in what they're doing with this technology rather than it just being a part of the lesson. It's actually a tool to make the writing happen. The book also supports the critical reading and composing across all the different situations that your students might encounter. And that's why I feel like the book is not necessarily for high school English teachers. In fact, we found places for it to fit in the fourth grade classroom. We found places for it to fit in the college classroom. So this really is a universal book, and a lot of the examples in the book come from middle school classrooms and high school classrooms, but it's definitely not limited, and it will not cease or lack to inspire the people who teach those other kinds of classes. The book also talks about some more tools that you can use and that you can use the digital space for your writing notebook, your writer's notebook, which is a best practice for teachers of writing. It encourages you to look at using digital spaces for portfolio writing, for peer response to students' writing, and for your response to student writing. Some of the tools, just to give you an idea of the tools that the book will talk about, it talks about RSS and social bookmarking for research writing. It talks about blogging for your students and the idea of drafting and peer editing. It looks at online word processors for peer editing and for interacting with you, the teacher, with your student. It also looks at podcasting for publishing your students' work and wikis for the same. The book also fills a need, which I think we have in the classroom, which is how do you assess an online learner, because it is different than assessing a paper pencil on demand kind of writer. And it includes some charts that will help you identify the traits of an online learner and their proficiency during reading, after, or during writing, before writing, and after writing. And the charts are excellent because they give you both what does a proficient writer look like and what is a proficient writer or a writer who's not proficient struggling with. So you can actually look at skills within which you might front load a lesson in order to target your students' needs after you've seen their proficiency, which digital literacy. And the interesting part I thought about the book was the discussion of digital response to student writing. The author Troy Hicks spent a, about a chapter talking about the nature of responding to your students' writing digitally. He discussed using something like Audacity to send your students personalized conferences about their papers where they could listen to you talking. And he did talk about how it would be hard work to do that, and you would be spending time doing that instead of doing something like writing lesson plans or scoring some fast worksheets, and that the time that you spent on it was actually more valuable to your students in their learning than it would be on some of those other activities anyway. So he does recognize the amount of time that it takes to score some of the pieces that the book suggests that you try. But when I looked at the pieces and I saw the amount of work that went into them and I saw the products that they took, I didn't see a significant difference in time that I might experience. Pick up this great book by Troy Hicks to help you start using digital writing in your classroom and to support your writing workshops that you're doing. It's an awesome book and I really enjoyed it. And I liked that it taught me how to use the technology while talking about doing good writing with students. Have a great day.